Welcome to another edition of 89 with Steve Smith Sr., James Palmer. Let's get into it, Steve, as the Detroit Lions. We wanted to start here because this is already considered by many, myself included, the best team in football. Yes, the Chiefs are still undefeated, but they got even better at the early morning of the trade deadline day on Tuesday, acquiring Za'Darius Smith and a 7th rounder in exchange for a 2025 5th rounder and a 2026 6th rounder from the Browns. This is essentially a trade that has been rumored / in the works, to my understanding, Steve, for the last 3 weeks, but finally happens. It is, I'm going to use air quotes, the replacement for Aiden Hutchinson, because I don't think you replace Aiden Hutchinson by any stretch, as good of a player as he is, but they get some much needed defensive line help. First thoughts on a type of move like this for a team in a spot that the Lions are in, probably much needed move, right? And we'll see what kind of addition Za'Darius Smith is for them.
I think it's a great move. I've known Za'Darius Smith for a very long time. He was in Baltimore when I was in Baltimore, so that's what I used to call him when he was a rookie. And even when I do it, still he gets so irritated. Za'Darius. But I think it's going to be a great acquisition for the Detroit Lions. But it's kind of one of those things. The one thing as far as like analysts and looking at it, Za'Darius is a guy who can penetrate, get back in there. The one thing that I would say about him, if there's one knock, is finishing. A lot of the time he's been first to the quarterback. He doesn't always finish the tackle.
Okay.
If you go back and watch him, when all the teams he's been, he's always almost there. He's almost got the tackle for the loss, but just doesn't finish it. So that's the one thing that I would love to see his game start to take that elevated position. You know, just being critical of a dog that I know and love, and believe that this is an upgrade, obviously, with the Cleveland Browns, what they're doing, what's not happening. I think there's a great pick for Detroit. He's kind of worked his way out of a lot of situations lately, and so I just hope that this is not another team that he's only temporarily there and then moves on to someone else. I would love to see him be a little bit more stable in one organization, because he's a hell of a football player.
He really is. I when you say the closing part, though, that worries me a little bit. Oftentimes, you want to acquire closers for playoff games, end of the season type of things, guys that can finish games. Hopefully he can get to the quarterback and maybe finish a game for the Detroit Lions. And you mentioned the stability. He has no guaranteed money after this year on his contract, 32 years old, still a very good player. We'll see if he ends up sticking around. I think culturally he fits as well, which I will say has been very important as the Lions went around looking at the trade deadline. This is some locker room here, Steve, and you know that some locker rooms are different than others. Some are more special than others, and that was, to my understanding, the culture of their locker room is something they didn't want to mess with at the trade deadline, because it is in such a great spot. And they went, into Green Bay, in the elements, with Jared Goff in his tiny little hands wearing gloves, and he actually threw the football well. It wasn't the end of the world, Steve. They played outdoors, and it was okay. He once again goes out there and balls, and as Kirby Joseph said after the game, we control the NFC.
That's true.
And there's some confidence coming out of that room, and I think I think it's true, because Jared Goff maybe put it best, because we've seen it in every way and fashion. He called this team a chameleon. He said, we can beat you a variety of ways to play against, obviously, your strengths and know your weaknesses as an opponent. They can be physical with you. They can throw the football over the field. They got a defense that can go out there and make plays. Yep. Do you think that chameleon aspect, how important is that when comes playoff time and you got defensive coordinators and offense coordinators at the top of their game, that you can continue to evolve?
I think it's unbelievable, because when you look at teams in the playoffs, those teams have so many plays that teams are looking at and try to get a sense of who you are. Every game plan, every game you line up and watch the Detroit Lions, you get a different player that shows up in a different way that you were counting on or you weren't counting on. And I just love the way Dan Campbell is able to adjust. David Montgomery fumbles, or he, gets bruised. All of a sudden, Jahmyr Gibbs is the feature back. They got to throw the football. They can throw it. They can put 41 points on you. However they need to do it, they're willing to do that. It's a chameleon. That's called flexibility. That's called coaching, good coaching. The one thing, though, you're hearing a lot of buzz, and we've talked about it, is what does Ben Johnson do after this? Does he stay or does he go to a new go as a coach? I think Ben Johnson needs to stay exactly where he is because he's also one of those guys who he sits. He sits in his office, closes his door, and he just gets down to all that funny just wizardness of his offense. And I just don't see that translating into becoming the same type of head coach that he's been able to impact the Detroit Lions as offensive coordinator.
They better sell some cars. Ford better sell some cars if they want to keep Ben Johnson as that offensive coordinator, because I think if you want to make him turn down some head coaching jobs, you have to shell out a little cash to keep him as your offensive coordinator. I think you're spot on, Stephen, what they can do offensively, what they can do differently. I looked this up. The next time they play outdoors, just because this is kind of a funny thing that I think everybody wants to make a big deal about, because I think they're actually built like a team that would play outdoors, actually, if you think about it, the way their physicality is and the way that they're made up. They don't play outdoors until at Chicago 12-22, their next 6 games indoors, and then they have Chicago, and then they're outdoors in against the 49ers and close out against the Vikings. I wanted to mention the defense is going to get tested down the stretch here when you look at what they're going to face late in the year, and then we'll move on off to Detroit, because they're going to have Green Bay week 14, which we know still can put up points. They put up a lot of yards against them this past week. Then they have Buffalo week 15 and San Francisco, if McCaffrey's back and they're clicking, week 17. I think we're going to get a chance to see this defense get tested a little bit at the end of the year before the postseason.
I don't know if the San Francisco 49ers is if they're going to actually test them, just because if they don't make any moves soon at wide receiver, I don't believe Christian McCaffrey is going to fix all the ailments for the San Francisco 49ers. We keep harping on CMC. I love to see him. I just saw, so they got that 21-day window. Man, he looks in top shape. Him being in shape has never been the issue. It's now who's going to step up and be that impact player for the San Francisco 49ers that Brandon Ayuk was last year. The Brandon Ayuk that unfortunately got hurt, he was still getting back in the swing of things. It was not impacting the offense in the same manner. So CMC is going to change everything. I just don't think that is a realistic expectation. I just don't like putting all that pressure on one guy when you still have both sides of the football who are making critical mistakes at the wrong time.
So if they don't add anybody, do you think then Debo, George Kittle, CMC, Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, is that enough to be a high-powered offense if they get into the postseason?
It doesn't matter if I believe it's enough. That's who the guys you have. Debo Samuels is using this offense in various ways. He's utilized in the passing game. However, he's the playmaker. He's not the route runner, the precise route runner that Brandon Ayuk is. And that's not a knock. I love Debo. I know what he brings to his name is Debo. He's different players. Everybody has a role. And for Debo to all of a sudden shift in that offense to become the precise route runner to run all of those routes, that's not his role in this offense. And it really hasn't been. That was the holdup. What his contract is. I'm a wide receiver, but you have me lined up at running back, tight end. You got me doing this. You got me doing wildcat. He brings so much to the table for that team. However, his role is not the wide receiver that runs those precise routes and how Kyle implements him in that offense. So they have to get someone who can be that route runner that adds to it. Debo is the Swiss Army knife. That's not a bad thing. It's not a knock. I'm not coming at anybody. People hear me say stuff like this and Steve is putting down. No, bro, I'm just explaining each individual's guy's role and responsibility in the offense.
You're telling me all these guys are not the same in the NFL, Steve? They're built differently. They play the positions differently.
Yeah,
what?
Sure did. Ain't that a shocker?
That's nuts. Oh, man.
Yeah, breaking news.
What's going on? James Palmer here. And let's get real for a second. You see the underdog graphics flying in and out of the show 89 with Steve Smith and myself. Well, you're probably wondering, What are these? Well, what they are is it gives you an opportunity to participate, to start playing. You can use the promo code UD89. You can scan the QR code and you can start playing instantly. Dive right in and you can win $1,000 bonus cash like that. You just got to pick higher or lower. So remember, scan that QR code. Use that promo code UD89. What we do here at 89, we give you analysis, we give you breakdowns, we give you the news. We love that you're here. We love that you're watching us and hanging out with us. But now, when you do this, you get an opportunity to find out if we actually know what we're talking about. Steve, let's get into our quick slants right here, and I don't think anything is going to be very quick about our discussion about Ladd McConkey and the comparison that Jim Harbaugh made of him, the rookie wide receiver, to you, Steve Smith Sr.
He reminds me of Steve Smith in the way that when he goes up for one of those contested balls, it's like they both had this ability and this skill to like almost look one way and then catch it just a few feet the other way.
It made me look up a couple of things, Steve, because I do want to put this out there first. I'm going to say it so you don't have to say it. He's only 14,291 yards short of catching you. He's only 996 catches short of catching you. So the comp's right there. He's right on your heels in his rookie season.
Hold on. Can you look up my all-purpose yards too?
19,173 all-purpose yards.
Yes, that's what I want to hear. See, a lot of people don't know Agent 89 put up a lot of all-purpose. 19,000. Wow.
I love the all-purpose. I just also think you're on a very, very short list, Steve.
It's whoa.
I think one of your best accomplishments was 05. The Triple Crown is a tough thing to do.
I thought you were talking about my height.
Steve, you're on a short list.
Hey, bro, you gotta laugh at yourself, dog.
Okay.
All right, let's stay on. So I got a quick story before you go. With Jim Harbaugh was in Carolina for probably 2 cups of coffee. He was in there for a couple of weeks. Brother couldn't get on the field. We were 1-15. Had a number of different quarterbacks come in and out. We had Todd Light, Damian Craig, Chris Winkie, Jeff Lewis. I was not allowed to play wide receiver. I was just a special teams guy. And Jim Harbaugh and I were slicing and dicing the Carolina Panthers in 2001. We were running. He was throwing me routes. I was just on special. I was on scout team, just getting them boys right. So Jim knows me very well. Obviously, I played for his brother in Baltimore. I like Ladd. I think he is a fantastic route runner. Just watching his game develop, when I watched him coming out of the draft last year at Georgia, I really liked what he was doing. You got to remember, he played 39 games for the University of Georgia, right? 82 first downs in his career. Hands. He has some great releases, good game speed. He has 51 targets, 35 receptions, 440 yards, averaging 12.6 yards per catch, 4 touchdowns, 23 first downs. When targeted, quarterback rating is 113. He's forced 8 missed tackles. He's been in the slot 69 times, only been out wide a little bit below 30%. But what I noticed watching the football game with Ladd, they line him up in a slot. They move him in motion a lot, but when they do line him out wide, it's in a condensed formation. So it almost statistically puts him in the slot. But he's their number 1 wide receiver. Now, on record with John, our producer, I said, I don't think he's the number 1 guy. Watching the tape over and over and watching this morning, bro, they give him the ball a lot and they're featuring him a lot. He has that Cooper Kupp ability to take over a game, precise, sneaky good, and like Jim said, he reminds him of a Steve Smith Sr. So when I woke up this morning, just like the other day, I was like, man, when I got put on my outfit, I was like, oh my gosh, is this Ladd or Steve? Steve or Ladd? I mean, we look the same. You know what I'm saying? Built the same. Yeah. He's a little bit taller. He's 5'11". I'm 5'9", 3/4. But, only thing separating us is my earrings, and I don't have hair. That's it.
I love the 3/4. Listen, Steve, I think you're spot on. And when you say that the way this goes, I know the way Justin Herbert is wired. When he trusts you, what ends up happening? You get volume, man. You get a lot of targets. You saw it with Keenan Allen when he started loving on Keenan Allen. It was just and you're starting to see that happen with Ladd, and I think it's the way kind of Herbert talks about him when you listen to him. He talks about how Ladd understands leverage, how he understands space really well. He trusts him in throwing some one-on-one type of balls. That's when you know a quarterback's really starting to trust you, when you're in tight man coverage, and he's still going to throw you the ball. He's starting to trust you pretty well. It's going to be interesting to see them grow together, because I think the other part of this is we're starting to see a lot of growth in Justin Herbert. Remember the injury that he had that kept him out of most of camp, and he's been battling back with the foot, and now you're starting to see him get a little more mobile, can play off schedule a little bit, get out of some sacks. You're seeing him really, in my opinion, he's going to have a really, really good second half, and I think that's when you have young receivers you start to grow with, and it looks like him and Ladd have something really kind of growing, and I want to touch on the team in general. I just think this team is built the Harbaugh way. Right? They're physical. They run the ball well. The defense, Jesse Minter might be one of the most underrated coordinators in football right now. He's coaching his tail off on the defensive side of the ball. This is a playoff team, Steve. And I think Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston, and like their growth is going to play a big part in how far this team can possibly go, because I think they're a playoff team.
Hey, man, you talking about, you mentioned that guy. You got to throw in Joshua Palmer. This is a guy, right, a couple of years ago, I kind of thought that he was the odd man out, and he's really stepped up and really grown and shown his worth with this team. The other thing that I wrote about Ladd that I just remembered, I started.
Oh, hit me.
Consistent in his routes. You can depend on Ladd being at his spot. And that is crucial for a wide receiver, but it also gets you really comfortable with the quarterback, because he knows if he's in trouble, who do I go to? Do I go to my speed guy, or do I go to my consistent guy? And the consistent people are the people who get fed the most. They become fat and happy, a la contracts.
All right, before we move on, what I've seen from him, Steven, I want to see if you know this element of his game, or you see this evolving as part of his game. So far, early, rookie, he's been very good, as you mentioned, and broke down really well in the intermediate routes, in the short routes, in the middle of the field. We've seen hints of the explosiveness downfield. Is that a part of his game? We saw it against the Saints, the ability to get downfield, because that does open everything else up, specifically when we know the Chargers like to run the football. If you can have some explosive element to your game, do you see that being something that grows with Ladd?
His game speed is good, right? People put so much emphasis on speed that they don't really understand that speed does kill, but if you don't know the why and how to utilize your speed, then it's just a muscle card. But you have to know how and why you're doing things. When I look at Ladd, I don't look at his speed as far as 40. What I look at is, how does he get from point A to point B? How does he release? Where and how does he come back to the ball? Does he make himself friendly for the quarterback? Is he quiet in the zone? Does he sneak in and sneak out? Those are all the little things that speed has nothing to do with. It's understanding why you're going there, understanding what the coverage is and what my role is, and also what are other people's roles in the offense as well. And when you start to do that, you can start to do things. And I always love working with you because you make me think. So I'm gonna bring up this whiteboard again, because I want to teach you a little cheat code on how to make the quarterback throw you the football even when you're not supposed to get the football.
Oh.
So there's a play where, let's say they're the corner. So you got the Z, and let's say Ladd's right here, right? You got a corner right here. Let's do a nickel, okay? And then so say they have cover 2. So this is the play right here where you have like this, which is called delay, okay? You got a delay route. Now, how you cheat, and I'm just going to tell you how you cheat is, let's just say they're in free safety, and so we're going to erase that, and let me show you. So they're in cover 2. So you got the corner and the hitch. But let me tell you, when you know what's going on, when they're usually playing the corner, this corner will either have here or here, right? And the safety has over the top.
Of course.
But if they're in cover 2, the safety is going to be more on this side. So when you know what you're doing, you start to say, okay, we need a big play. It's 3rd and 5 yards. Most of the time, people want to go to the corner. You want the touchdown. But here's what you can do when you know something. You can hesitate, which puts the inside receiver to go to the corner. I would delay a little bit, which means this corner it gets impatient. He's looking at me, but he's also, right, these are eyes.
Yep.
He's looking at the corner. So when I delay, he has to go with the corner, which means I delay, run the stop, quarterback has to throw me the ball because this corner is worried about the big play. And that's how, and I'm pointing that out to show you, when you understand how to manipulate a defense, and unfortunately, I'll say this quietly, manipulate your quarterback in throwing you the football, that's when you know you've mastered the craft of understanding how to be a number 1 wide receiver. Number 1 wide receivers aren't just about the catches. They know how to manipulate the defense and the offense to benefit them. But that means you have to study defenses and the whole offense to know, how do I get what I want?
Man, I love that.
All right, listen, folks. We got a new segment, and this segment is going to be going on once a month. And let me tell you, this segment is called Do Tell. Not the D-O, but the D-U-E, Do Tell, which is because rent is always free when you're in somebody's head. But let me tell you something. I've never, ever seen in a football game. I'm in New York watching the Commanders, and unfortunately, the New York Giants pretty much have 0 yards in the first half. And then I'm watching the Carolina Panthers on my laptop, watching that game, silently cheering.
No cheering in the press box.
Right? No cheer. I was silent cheer. Jazz hands. And so I see Mike Jeezy is telling me, look at this. I'm like, what? He's talking about Michael Thomas tweeting. Can you please run down what has happened with Michael Thomas, Derek Carr, New Orleans Saints, and Dennis Allen? Because obviously everything ain't peachy.
Everything is not peachy. A man just lost his job. And Dennis Allen is no longer the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. That's the first one. We'll touch on that quickly because I believe the juicy stuff, yes, is in the Derek Carr and Michael Thomas situation. Essentially, the locker room's lost. It's broken. They don't know how to fix it. But my understanding, more importantly, Steve, is they believe Dennis Allen can't be the one to fix it, that he doesn't know how to fix it. So they go and find another route after this season on how they're going to fix this year. There's a lot to be had there. Real quickly, I'll say it's a team that is probably, if you ask around the league, a middle of the tier type of job opportunity. This is one that has financial issues down the road. They're only $77 million over the cap for next year right now, and a lot of contracts that they can't get out of, with an aging roster that still is good.
Hold on,
roster.
wait, hold the phone. You can't just
just brush over $77
million over the cap.
Just
There's $77 million over the cap.
Over the cap. Over
How
the
do you
cap for
get
next year.
right with $77 million over the cap?
The
So
issue
that
with
means
this,
they're going to have to fire sale or just cut their losses.
And that's the hard part with the way the New Orleans Saints are wired, because what usually happens in New Orleans, right? They don't ever admit that they're in a fire sale mode, that they're in a rebuild mode. It's been this way for decades now with Mickey Loomis running this and the way Sean Payton was running it. Money was just getting kicked down the can over and over again. And eventually, you're going to look in your email, Steve, or it's going to come in, old school mail. I'm not sure which version you get, your credit card statement, but they are well over the balance. And they're gonna that number's coming due. And I think I had a GM in the league tell me this. Whoever the next head coach is, Steve, that's probably going to have to be a 6-year contract, because these next 2 years of your deal, they're not on you. Those first 2 years aren't on you. What you got to clean up in terms of where the roster is, you don't have a quarterback, and where you are financially, and the dead money you're going to be operating with. So I think it's a really interesting situation when they move on. Remember, they were looking at quarterbacks in the first round. They were looking to try to move up or take a quarterback early. Now, where do things stand with Derek Carr? If you part ways with him pre-June 1st, it's only $51 million in dead cap money for next season. If it's post-June 1, I believe it's It's nuts, man. I mean, if it's post June 1, it's 21.4 next year and 30 million in 2026. There's some issues that they definitely have to deal with.
Does that include the 77 million that they're over? So do I add?
No, he's part of it.
57 million?
No. He's
part
of the
okay.
77.
So how much is he part?
Well, it can be maneuvered. I mean, obviously, this is the way they maneuver. They love to maneuver. Void. It's insane. It's wild. So I think this situation is going to be fascinating to watch what they do after the year, because Mickey Loomis is going nowhere. And Gail Benson had an opportunity after they got mollywopped by their former head coach and Sean Payton on a Thursday night, on the night that they honored Drew Brees, and the stands just emptied in the second half. With that being a Thursday night, extra time, had a couple conversations, I'm told, with some of these players in New Orleans, got a good pulse on where the locker room stands. And then when your Carolina Panthers took them down this past Sunday, that was kind of the other part that usually happens with a coach being let go during the season, when the failures are now public. When you got Kalen Saunders tweeting on the bus that he's going to be in Cancun come January, you have a lot of things getting out to where now it's a
week 9. You already at Cancun?
Oh, he was tweeting on the bus, Steve. He was tweeting on the bus. I'm going to be in Cancun January 10th. Let's go. So this is where things obviously got worse, and we'll transition now to that's a good transition to Twitter and to Michael Thomas, because we did see, and I know you're laughing, he is ass on a granny is probably a term that I never thought I'd say on a broadcast.
I ain't never heard that one. On my granny tush, bro.
What was your take? Because this is why it's connected. What was your take on the ball Derek Carr threw Chris Olave, that thankfully he is healthy. He's out of the hospital, obviously, taken off the field on a backboard, on a cart. Scary looking situation. Also, his 5th concussion of his career, includes one in college. What was your take on the ball, first off? Because that's what Michael Thomas, it's what started this whole Twitter extravaganza.
Well, I mean, it was a tight window. He probably shouldn't have threw the ball in. How about that?
Let me ask you this, because I asked another receiver, Steve. It was that ball should be low or dirted. Like it should be my guy can catch it low, or it's borderline into the dirt. Is that a proper analysis for that type of spot on the field?
I generally would like the football more in my chest, because that allows me to kind of pick my options. Right, I don't really like a low ball because I'm 5'9", so it's just I don't really like diving for the ball like that, because I already fractured my neck in college, so I'm a little sensitive to the low passes.
Makes sense.
I always felt throw the ball here, and I can protect myself. If you throw it here, now you've taken that out of my hands, and now I have to depend on you to direct me where to go. And I never really liked that. I would go up begrudgingly. Like I would go up like, and roll my eyes and puff, because I knew I couldn't control it. And we talked about this. I'm a one-legged jumper. So I rarely jumped off 2 legs unless it was in the end zone where I'm going straight up. If I'm going forward, I would always go with one leg. So that's why I preferred catching the ball in my chest, because I always had one foot up, which means I was looking, okay, if the ball's here, he's telling me that the defender is coming. So that would tell me with my 1 foot, I would be able to spin the other way. Now, that is not always the case, but I'm just telling you from my mindset of how I played the game, what I would do based on my body mechanics and how I played the game from the shoulders up, which is one leg, depending on the ball, meant how I would turn, how I would catch the ball, and how I would protect myself. With that all being said, it was a tight throw. Mm-hmm. Carr always has kind of, when you rush him, he's always kind of panicked and kind of hesitates with throwing the football. That's one of his MOs. That's one of the things that
it's been a trait his whole career, yes.
But as a receiver, you also got to know your opponent, and you got to know your teammate. And you know that's coming, so you have to decide. That's what they call a business decision. You got to decide, am I going to go up for this football? And earlier in my career, I would. Later in my career, I'm like, man, I done seen this movie before, and it don't look good for 8-9, so I'm not going to do it.
I get it. Listen, Michael Thomas, this stems back from a ball that Derek Carr threw him the previous year that he believes led him to an injury, that he believes kept him from 1,000 yards. Obviously, Michael Thomas is also at home watching this game because right now he's not currently on an NFL roster. That he's a free agent. What I'm referencing was a tweet that Michael Thomas had since deleted that he said last year about a ball that Derek Carr threw him over the middle. I'll say this. I don't think Derek Carr's trying to hurt any of his teammates. I don't think he's intentionally trying to hang any of his teammates out to dry.
No, it happens though.
It does. It totally happens. I always go back to Tom Brady always being very public about trying his best as a quarterback to see it as quickly as possible to make the correct decision not to put his receiver in that type of position. And so those are some of the things that go through a quarterback's mind when they're trying to make a decision. But also, Steve, you can have a bad throw. You can also have a real bad throw that hangs your receiver out to dry as well. I do think, in all honesty, the post-game press conference, Derek Carr handled it publicly about the best he could. When he was asked repeatedly about Michael Thomas's comments. And he said he's had a lot of teammates, and he doesn't know why, but Michael Thomas is one he never got along with. And so this stems, it seems to be a bit personal between the two.
You think? How'd you gather that information? You think so? You think it's personal?
Well, I am a journalist.
Bro, Granny's tush? I ain't never heard that one. That was the first one.
That's definitely a first.
Hey, so let me ask you, how does something like this happen and go downhill so quickly, publicly like this, with a former teammate who's currently not on the roster, watching his former team? Like, I've never really seen that. I mean, we've seen it a little bit, but not to this magnitude. Like, what? Mm-mm. How does a team get like this so quickly, so fast, and publicly?
Well, I mean, you are lumping in Michael Thomas into how does a team have an issue so publicly, because Michael Thomas is not part of the team anymore. So you could say it's a former player being upset about what's going on with the current team, because I think it'd be a much larger story in all honesty, Steve, if this is a guy who's on IR or something and he's on the roster, he's still in the locker room with Derek Carr, and he's saying these things. Michael Thomas is not part of the Saints anymore, so I do think there is a little bit of a split there.
But it's obviously he's talking about something of the past, and this obviously has not been addressed. It's a unresolved issue.
Unresolved issue for sure. I'm not sure if he's telling the truth or not. I don't know. I haven't checked his cell phone records, but Derek Carr says that he has reached out to Michael Thomas, says he still has the same number. They've never spoken about it. He's tried to get to the bottom of it, and he has gotten no answers from Mike. So I think what also culminates, and this stems back to Dennis Allen, and it stems back to where things are right now. Who's the guy who wanted to bring Derek Carr to New Orleans? It's his former head coach in Dennis Allen. He wanted to bring Derek there. It all kind of does come together in some capacity when the coach who is now just fired this week is also the one who brought the quarterback to the city and to the franchise. It will be fascinating to see what Derek Carr's future is, Steve, after this season, because it's going to be very interesting what happens in New Orleans moving forward and what the plan is.
So let me ask you this. Where does Derek Carr go next year? Let's just say hypothetically, Derek Carr is released of his duties as because a new head coach is going to come in. He's going to want his guy, unless he's forced to keep Carr on the roster because of the money implications. Is Derek Carr, in your opinion, at this point in his career, based off 9 weeks in, is he a starting quarterback in the National Football League for another team next year?
I think we're getting, you know what my comp might be now in Derek Carr after this season? I think we're getting into Andy Dalton territory.
Ooh, okay.
Where I think he's on a roster. I think there's a chance he could be a starter. I mean, I don't know if there's 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now. So his chance of landing somewhere is probably good. I mean, Russell Wilson landed somewhere as a starting quarterback after the 2 years he had in Denver, and I don't think Derek Carr's played like that. So I would say that he has a job, but I think we are entering the Andy Dalton type of range. Yes. Here's a quick slant for you, Steve. It is America's favorite segment, and when I say that, I do not lie to you people. It is Route of the Week, starring Steve Smith Sr.
I'm just so pumped to talk football right now. I don't even know why. Let's go!
Steve's excited, I'm excited, and we're going to break down Jalen Coker from the Carolina Panthers. And this is important, I think, moving forward as well, because we've seen Deontay Johnson leave via trade.
He go.
We've seen Jonathan Mingo now leave via trade to the Dallas Cowboys.
He go.
So they are relying, and they like, to my understanding, I just shouldn't be telling you anything about the Panthers, their young wide receiving core, and they'd like to see them get some run. And this is a route by one of their young wide receivers that you've talked about a couple of times on this show. Steve, the floor is yours for Route of the Week.
Well, let me go back here and look up some receipts. I usually don't do this, but I will say it. Hey, Coach, you remember I called it? He goes, yeah, you called it. Yes, sir, I remember in training camp. That is me and Coach David Canales talking when I was the preseason play-by-play, colored guy. So I love Jalen Coker. I watched his film in Holy Cross. The game and the tape that really sold me on Jalen Coker is when he was going against Boston College. He played at Holy Cross. He's not going to really do anything speed-wise, but he understands leverage and how to get in and out of his breaks and how to utilize his speed. That's where game speed is important. Run the tape, John, so I can show you why. He's not going to outrun you, but what he does, you got the motion, they slide. Nickel defender comes down, so he adjusts. You got the RPO game, so that brings the linebackers up, which opens the window. Coker goes to the hash, but what he does that makes him spectacular, you see the step up where he goes and straightens back up. When he straightens back up, that gives the corner the indication that he may be going a different way. And just
like
that
one
little
bad step, Steve. You can see it in the corner.
Thank you. Look at you. And James, where does the corner step outside of his what? What are we talking about? When you want to get
outside
a corner,
of his frame.
Outside his frame. And what is his frame? Shoulders, knees and toes, baby. Shoulders, knees and toes. Okay? That's just not
That's a step right there. You see it.
And that's the difference. Now, Jalen Coker can catch anything. He's a young man that contested catches, that's mine. Run a good route, that's mine. And what does Bryce do? He throws the ball deep. And guess who? To 18. And that becomes, that's mine.
I didn't see it until you really pointed it out. But man, that step back outside of his shoulder, and he just lost all his momentum.
That's why you don't need speed. You need to know how.
When he goes upfield, he's kind of straightened up like he was going to start going.
You know why he
straightened up? With his upper body.
You know why he straightened up? Because that's the only way, air quotes, you can go back to the other side. But because Coker does not have that speed, he knows if I do this, bang, now that unwasted step is here, which means when I go here, that's two steps. The corner does this, two,
and then has to get going.
Three. So that's one step more than the other guy. So I'm not a math genius, right?
Pull out the phone calculator.
I'm just going to do the old, right? So
Whoa,
if you got
the size of that thing.
I know, I'm getting old, bro. If you got 3 and
Get
you're
the jumbo
minus
numbers.
2, that means somebody got 1. Yeah. Good player, man. Holy cross. I talked about him a couple of months ago. I think I know what I'm talking about, but hey, what do I know? Today, folks, that is 89's Route of the Week by Jalen Coker, his Carolina Panthers. And you have been schooled. See you next week.
Here's the deal, people. All season long, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Only on Underdog. Pick higher or lower on your favorite player, and you can join the millions of fans winning millions this season. Sign up today using promo code UD89, and you'll get a free pick as part of your first cash entry, plus $1,000 in bonus cash. Again, promo code UD89 to cash in on every touchdown this season, only on Underdog. Steve, this is a dig route, but these routes were not dig routes. They were outstanding. 2 of the greatest catches you are ever going to see, and they both happened this past week. Garrett Wilson in the end zone, one hand, looking like Michael Jordan, like the logo.
That was dope.
And Devonta Smith somehow tapping 2 feet.
The Slim Reaper!
We'll get to Smitty in a second, but let's start with Garrett Wilson and break this down for us, Steve, in terms of degree of difficulty.
I ain't never caught a pass like that, so I'm just going to throw that out there right now. Ain't never ever.
Steve, tell me about this catch.
It's a fantastic catch. You look down here, outside, takes off. The only thing I would say is looking back too soon, which slows him down, but gets a foot down, gets 2 feet down, catches the ball. You know Aaron Rodgers. Hey, Rod. Throwing it out there. Great catch.
Do you think since he couldn't get 2 feet down, do you see him consciously trying to just get the shin down then? So he's in bounds since he couldn't get 2? I think he looks like he's trying to.
I've never experienced something like that, so I can't really talk about what I don't know. So it's a hell of a catch. Sometimes you just got to call it what it is. Call that spade a spade as a hell of a catch. Never experienced that. I've caught a few. I ain't never caught one like that. I don't know what it's like to be in that catch radius with the one hand. That's just ridiculous.
I recently was in the locker room in Houston talking to CJ Stroud, and we were talking about Marvin Harrison. He said, I will tell you this right now, of all the guys I played with, and he played with Chris Olave, and he played with Jackson Smith and Jigba, who just went off.
Ball.
He played with Marvin Harrison Jr. He actually played a little bit, just in practice, maybe with Jamison Williams. He was like, Garrett is the best out of all of them.
Really?
And that's my opinion. That's
okay.
CJ's opinion, that Garrett Wilson is the best out of all the receivers he has played with. And now let's go to the Slim Reaper and Smitty.
Yes.
I'm fascinated by this, Steve, because as he's trying to one-hand it, he's dragging one toe
yes.
and he taps the other. But the route's really good too, by the way.
Ooh, they go low. It's kind of a sloppy out route, but I don't care. Drags both feet. I could do something like that in my dreams, but I ain't never really did it in real life. Nice ball thrown. Ooh, that's a great.
I mean, how far out of bounds is that ball?
So you saying I have to pick which one?
Sure. Why not?
I can't.
No.
They're both outstanding, and I've never done any one of them, so I can't pick.
This is what I got from a wide receiver coach. Okay.
Hold on, no. Is it a good wide receivers coach? That's the question.
I love that you said that because all position coaches are not created equal in the land of the NFL. It is a very good wide receiver coach. Okay. Very well respected.
All right, cool. Then we can continue.
Smitty's was wild because he was able to drag his one foot and then tap the other and keep it down.
Yes, toe tap swag.
But he was more impressed with the one that he was dragging to keep that one in contact with the ground the whole time.
Yes, because the one he was dragging.
Because he had to reach.
Yes.
It should pull you off the ground.
And but what does he do? What does Smitty do? You remember I said earlier in the segment, I talked about how a guy jumps up. How does he jump up? With what? One leg. And that's it's just everybody's different. Some guys use 2. DeAndre Hopkins uses 2. But this is outstanding. I'm just sitting here watching and marveling at it. It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable, right? And so this was the take on the Garrett Wilson. Garrett's was wild because of the adjustment to the throw.
Yes, with his body control.
And to catch it one hand completely
across
upright.
Behind him.
Yeah.
Like even just doing that, my back is tightening up. Just doing that. Like I'm doing that right now. I worked out this morning, so I'm a little dehydrated. Ooh, like that, it's already cramping up.
So I asked him to pick one. His answer back was both are insane. He wasn't about to pick.
Yeah, see? That he's a good wide receivers coach.
So we won't pick, but they're two absolutely incredible catches, actually huge plays in the game for both teams, honestly. And we had another monster play, another one-handed grab in Demarcus Robinson, who's benefiting greatly lately, Steve, of Cooper Kupp coming back on the field, of Puka Nacua coming back on the field, where Puka actually was on the field for this game for a short bit before, I think, a rather lame ejection for a tap at the side of the helmet. I was in the press box for this game. I attended this game in Seattle. Steve told me during the week when we were on the phone, that's a sorry-ass game, and guess what? It ended up being a complete wildfire.
I didn't say that.
Half in overtime. You said you're at a dog game. You said that to me.
I did? Was it on the recorded line?
No, it was not.
So why are you saying it on the recorded line? Oh, snitch.
Well, it turned out to be a great game, Steve. With a walk-off. The 46th game-winning drive for Matthew Stafford in his career. 6th all-time. Run me through the catch, because I think you believe it's a better route than a catch.
I think it's a better route. And also, too, let's go ahead and put this man, Reek Woolen. Hey, bro.
Did you go with your granny-ass glasses?
Yeah, I need something better out of you, Reek. I'm expecting. I know what kind of player you are. I do not want to see other wide receivers making plays on you. You're too gifted, too talented, too fast. Wingspan. Your wingspan is larger than a 747. Come on, baby. You got to make these plays. You got to, because if you don't, I know Coach Mike McDonald. He ain't going to keep tolerating that now. So let's go ahead and hit that play with Demarcus Robinson. Great route. Excellent catch.
Tell me about the left arm, Steve.
The left arm, a little, little nudge.
Gave him one of these real quick.
Little chicken wing, you know what I'm saying? Drum et, bow. Catching it, it's not, as long as you don't extend, you're all right. He didn't extend, adjusted well to the football. The Demarcus Robinson that we're seeing in the Los Angeles Rams has been the type of player that we expected out of him to perform when he was in Kansas City. Went to Baltimore, didn't really have the stellar year that you would anticipate, but he's really became that complete receiver, doing a really good job down in the Los Angeles Rams, and it's pretty cool to watch him play some really talented football, becoming a complete wide receiver. Some people would say, they just didn't have enough room for him. Things like that, I always say, they love you so much, they let you go. They always find a way, but allowing him to go to the Los Angeles Rams, I think that will extend his career and show that he's a well-rounded wide receiver, and I expect more and more plays that they get more and more comfortable with Puka Nacua being out with injuries or getting, kicked out of the game for the ticky-tack, but some of the injuries that they sustain, I would expect he will continue to add to this. Tutu Atwell hasn't really kind of found his place. And so Demarcus Robinson is really coming on, kind of like with Woods, how Woods really came on for the Los Angeles Rams back then as well. So he would transition from when he was in Buffalo to become the great player he was with the Rams, and now he's obviously with Houston helping those young guys come along.
Yeah, and he's needed in Houston right now where they stand at the wide receiver position. A couple of notes being at this game, Steve, and I love what you touched on, because I love that, some people kind of, reporters are asking Demarcus Robinson the last couple of weeks, how much are you benefiting from the return of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua? And he's like, I think I'm a pretty good receiver in my own right. Like, he's trying to make sure, like, hey, I can still make plays on my own. Like, I can still make plays, which I think is a great mentality.
He's making plays.
And he's making them. And Matthew Stafford's told us in the locker room the same thing. He was like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, this guy's a really good receiver.
Yes, he is.
And he said, this is the best part about this play, Steve. When he went to the line of scrimmage, Matthew Stafford had no intention that he was ever going to throw this ball, this deep corner here. Like, he never thought that was going to be the case, but it ends up being an all-out zero blitz. And what ends up really freeing this up is Cooper Kupp on the edge and hitting the block to let Stafford roll out and get out into space before he makes the throw to Demarcus Robinson. And why I think the Rams are really on to something right now, Steve, is they stopped him. Obviously, a D-line that is so young, so talented, and are starting to play really, really well. All first and second year guys. Gets a 3rd and 1 and a 4th and 1 stop down there in the red zone in overtime. And what ends up happening, I think this is really telling. Matthew Stafford goes 4 plays, 83 yards, for a walk-off without targeting Cooper Kupp once.
Yeah.
He didn't even look his way.
Well, he already had
able
like
to
10
go
or 11
down the
catches.
He had 11 for 106. He had 11 for 106.
Yeah, so it's you got to show the defense and the next week team that, yes, Cooper's going to get his catches, but he's also other guys are going to show up and play well. You know, people were coming in the comments talking about the Los Angeles Rams are the team to beat. Again, let's, just jumping around a little bit. The Arizona Cardinals mollywopped. I'm talking about mollywopped the Chicago Bears. And the Chicago Bears need to get their act together. They've been in our mentions. They've been in our comments talking about we're discrediting the Chicago Bears. Here's why I discredit the Chicago Bears. Until the Chicago Bears understand how to consistently run the football and stop putting so much onus on Caleb Williams and the play action game. Why are you having play action without no play? You got the action of the pass, but you ain't got really no play of running the football. And Shane Waldron needs to get this fixed, because if he doesn't get this fixed, they all about to be out of a job. And I just love how Matt Eberflus is chastising his players and telling them what they need to do. You need to get on this coaching, because you're dialing up a pass blitz and they ran the football up on you all day. So you got to get this done.
Steve, I love that you brought that up, because you said putting too much on Caleb Williams, running the play action, things like that. What are we seeing in Arizona during this success? You're seeing Kyler Murray get under center more. Yep. You're seeing them taking some of the stuff off his plate. They're running the football with James Conner. They're being physical. They have physical receivers. They have a physical tight end who you love in Trey McBride. They got a run the football, play physical defense, and in the last 2 weeks, their mentality, I was told, shifted entirely. Mm-hmm. It was like, are we going to be potential sellers? Let's see what happens over these couple weeks. They gonna end up being buyers, and they're calling everybody for some pass rush help, and end up landing Baron Browning from the Denver Broncos before the deadline. And so the Cardinals think they're onto something, and I think they're building this thing the right way. I mean, you go out and you get a dominant left tackle at the top of the draft. You get a dominant wide receiver. You have Kyler Murray, who's growing as a player in terms of what you're asking him to do, and he is accepting those new things. Yeah. I think it's been really fun to watch what Jonathan Gannon and Monty have done. Yeah.
I would expect them in the draft and free agency to solidify, get some better guards, and then they'll be good. Just because with a shorter quarterback and a younger quarterback, the success is not on the tackles. It's the center and guard position where those guys can really move up, where the quarterback can move up, feel comfortable. Kyler Murray is a runner, but he's really a pretty precise and accurate thrower. If you can solidify and get some anchor in those two guards, then all of a sudden you can see a different Kyler Murray that we saw in Oklahoma, where he's all of a sudden throwing to Hollywood Brown, who's making Hollywood Brown a first-round draft pick. He's throwing to all these different guys that makes things better. So I would expect, just moving forward, that's what they will look at. Some of the best quarterbacks don't have great tackles. They're centers and guards that make it happen.
It's the best one on the planet, Steve. What happened after Patrick Mahomes was running for his life against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Super Bowl? The next draft, they end up getting Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, inside Joe Tooney in free agency, and now they probably have the best interior in all of the NFL. They don't worry about the tackles, in all honesty. If you got a guy that can move like Kyler
Murray. Yeah, they do kind of worry about their right tackle a little bit. He's a little quick.
They're a little quick on Monday night, too.
Several times.
But you get what I'm saying.
Yes.
That was the emphasis to rebuild that offensive line, was we know Pat's athleticism getting outside can also make some plays, but we can't do anything about pressure up the middle.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting if they can hit on a couple guys in Arizona up there, man. Yep. It's been fun to watch the Arizona Cardinals leading that division right now. It's been fun. Steve, enjoy Germany.
Donka! Hey, that's the only one I know.
He's already fluent.